Dark Magician at Team Sorters here, and welcome back to What If Wednesday. This time it's another one I'm talking about regarding Razer. Now, this is actually partially a redo, because I was editing this video and then somehow I didn't upload some of it, because rather annoyingly I split it in parts because I was having difficulty figuring out some seeds and kept stopping, which was kind of annoying, and I lost the first part. I thought I still had it, but then I accidentally deleted it. So I've got to redo it. So annoying, but yeah. This is basically about what would happen if Razer didn't break down against Aggrobot 3, no, sorry, the original Aggrobot in Series 3. Hopefully I should be able to do this more quickly. Well, if Razer didn't break down, it would change everything. I mean, Aggrobot has no chance of winning this, so Razer wins that. Then it crushes Blade with ease in the Heat final. Then it would go on to face Beast of Bodmin, so it would be a clash of a former champion and a future champion, and Razer just crushes Beast of Bodmin quite easily. Stegosaurus puts up a good fight though, but ultimately Steg gets crushed as well, and then Razer would go through to the grand final and face Hypnodisc. But yeah, in a Series 3 setting, Hypnodisc has no chance. I mean, Razer just gets at Hypnodisc far too quickly and just crushes through the disc before it can spin up to speed. And then it just lays into Hypnodisc some more, and Hypnodisc is finally beaten. And yeah, it would be hard to say whether or not it would be ready for the playoff. If it's not, then Firestorm finishes third by default, but if it is, then I reckon Firestorm will just come at Hypnodisc too quickly and just flip it over. Because yeah, I don't see Hypnodisc beating Firestorm here. This would mean that Razer and Chaos 2 would face off in the grand final, and it would play out the exact same way as the first World Championship fight, with Razer crushing through the gas canister, disabling the flipper, and yeah, Chaos 2 has no chance after this, so Razer becomes the UK champion. It does make me wonder how their actual fight in the World Championship would have gone otherwise. Either it would have played out the same way and nothing changes, or Chaos 2 would have been able to win somehow and would then go on to defeat 101 and Beowulf and become the world champion instead. I mean, it depends whether or not a Chaos 3 would have been made or not as well, which is something I didn't think of. But it might be safe to assume that it wouldn't be made. So there's a little switch around with the seeds. Obviously Razer would be number 1, Chaos 2 would be 2, and then because of the way the seeds were done, Panic Attack would have been seeded 3rd, because it's the Series 2 champion. And what I noticed with the actual Series 4 seeds is that, well, ranking the top two based on who won and who finished second, that's simple enough. But they put Razer as the third seed purely because it's the world champion, even though it lost in round 2 in Series 3. And then they made Panic Attack fourth because it was the Series 2 champion, despite it not making the grand final, unlike Firestorm and Stegosaurus. So yeah, anyway, Panic Attack would be third, then Firestorm would be fourth, Hypnodisc would be fifth, and then everyone else remains the same. But they do stay in their own battles, but they do get switched around in corresponding heats. So for instance, Razer, Velociraptor and Robo Chicken are in Heat A instead of Heat B. That plays out the same way with Razer and Robo Chicken winning. King Bee 3 and Medusa 2000 win the other fight. So then Razer beats Medusa 2000 just by crushing it quite easily. King Bee 3, I reckon, would beat Robo Chicken. I know in the actual timeline here it does catch fire and break down, but I feel like that was more down to Atomic pushing it around and even flipping it over once. But against Robo Chicken, King Bee 3 should be perfectly fine and win that and go through to the heat final to face Razer, but then gets crushed and beaten by Razer. So yeah, Heat B, Panic Attack, Smidsy and Overkill are here instead of Heat O. So Panic Attack and Smidsy win, while Pussycat and Millianbug win the other fight. Then Panic Attack beats Millianbug with no problems. Pussycat and Smidsy face off against each other, and Smidsy is very strong at this point. It does ram Pussycat a few times, but doesn't really phase it, and it can't really push Pussycat that easily because of the shape. And Pussycat would get a few hits in with the saw and do some significant damage. I mean, it would be a close fight, but I feel like Pussycat would just about edge out Smitty on damage. Even though Smitty would do well on aggression, which would mean it doesn't make the heat final in this timeline. And then, of course, Panic Attack and Pussycat then end up meeting 1 year earlier, and Panic Attack has no chance. It just gets shredded by Pussycat. The forks get damaged and disabled, the skirts get ripped a bit. Pussycat wins this, and Panic Attack, for the first time ever, fails to reach the series semi-finals. Heat C, Hypnodisc, Razorblade and the Predator are here instead of Heat B. The Hypnodisc goes through with Razorblade just about going through as well. Meanwhile, Megan Bolt from the Blue beat Deator. Then Hypnodisc should have no problem whatsoever against Bolt from the Blue. And as for Ming 2 and Razorblade, well, Razorblade is still having some problems and isn't moving about freely enough, and it's just easy for Ming 2 to shove around and even flip up and over. Now I know Ming 2 does break down here, or at least it would have done while fighting the Morgue, but I'm not sure what would have caused it to break down. Of course, it doesn't really matter. Well, if Ming 2 wins, then, well, I think it would get beaten by Hypnodisc. It just has a bit of trouble fighting Hypnodisc, and Hypnodisc just causes a lot of damage and goes through. But you know, if Razor Blade wins and Ming mysteriously breaks down, then the heat final plays out the same way as in the actual timeline with Hypnodisc winning. And then nothing changes until Heat O, where Firestorm, the Morgue and Scar are here instead of Heat C. Firestorm goes through easily, the Morgue goes through after being reinstated, Aggrobot 2 and Sawpoint go through as well, beating Oblivion. Firestorm beats Sawpoint 2, not too many problems, whereas Aggrobot would likely struggle against the Morgue. And the Morgue goes through, then the Heat final plays out the same way. One thing I will say is that some thought it was a kind of bullshit that Firestorm went through instead of the Morgue due to a technicality with the pit, but then again, well, to be fair, even if the Morgue did go through, I don't think it would have beaten Dominator 2. There wasn't really much it could... I don't think there's much the Morgue could do against Dominator 2 anyway, and you know, getting good hits with the axe would go in Dominator 2's favour. So, just thought I'd share my hot take on that. Then last heat, Chaos 2, Atomic, and excuse me, Indefatigable are here instead of Heat A. Chaos 2 and Atomic go through. Well, VMAX and Terrible go through. Chaos 2 beats VMAX with not too many problems. Atomic beats Terrible quite easily. Then the Heat final plays out the same way, and Chaos 2 goes through. So, semi-final 1. Razer and Steg meet again in a rematch, and Razer beats Stegosaurus. The following two fights involving Wheelie Big Cheese, Tornado, Pussycat and Thermidor play out the same way. And then Hypnodisc faces Dominator 2 like 1 year earlier. And, well, I guess Hypnodisc probably could get through the titanium armour. I mean, it managed to tear through the Series 5 shell, so Hypnodisc should have no problem here, and with the wheels being exposed, they're an easy target for the disc, so Hypnodisc beats Dominator 2 and goes through. Then Razer meets Tornado, like 1 year earlier, and the rivalry begins 1 year earlier as well. Yeah, Tornado has no chance of beating Razer here, so Razer goes through. Meanwhile, Hypnodisc unfortunately gets pitted against Pussycat, and they meet 1 round earlier, and that plays out the same way as in the actual timeline, with a wheel getting jammed up, Hypnodisc getting struck by Shunt's axe, and Pussycat goes through to the grand final, so it caused another major upset there. So semi-final 2, a Stinger of course beats Mousetrap, Firestorm 2 would beat Spawn of Scutter quite easily, Chaos 2 flips Splinter all over the place and wins, Wild Thing still beats Exterminator. Then round 2, Firestorm would beat Stinger quite easily with not too many problems, well, while it would be hard to flip Stinger, it would still just shove it all over the place, and Firestorm just wins on control as well as aggression. Meanwhile, I guess Chaos 2 faces Wild Thing, again meeting 1 year earlier, and I guess it plays out a similar way to the Series 5 fight. Chaos 2 wins this. So, we have almost the same grand final as the previous year, only Pussycat is here instead of Hypnodisc. Speaking of bloody sirens, Pussycat then faces Pussycat, and yeah, Chaos 2 faces Pussycat. Sorry, got distracted by the siren. That plays out basically the same way as the original timeline. Meanwhile, yeah, again, another matchup that happens 1 year earlier. Razer faces Firestorm and beats it with ease. And then Firestorm 2 and Pussycat face off in the playoff. Again, another matchup that happens 1 year earlier. Now, I did read somewhere that Pussycat would beat Firestorm 2, but I'm not so sure of that. I don't think Pussycat would be able to do that much damage. I think it would definitely play out the same way as the Series 5 fight. I mean, sure, Pussycat could damage Firestorm, but not really that much. I mean, it is able to do more to Pussycat than what Smidsy was able to do in the earlier rounds, and just flip it all over the place. I mean, again, Firestorm 2 is just too controlled and aggressive, so Firestorm wins and takes third place again. Meanwhile, the top two is the same as before. Razer against Chaos 2. Now, chances are Razer would beat Chaos 2. I mean, that always happens whenever they face off, although there was one unaired event that happened at some point in 2000 where Razer and Chaos 2 fought each other and Chaos 2 was able to win. So I'm not sure how that happened. Maybe Chaos 2 got lucky, or maybe Razer broke down. I'm not sure what the story was exactly. All I remember was that Razer had beaten Wild Thing along the way, and Razorblade would have fought Razer, but it broke down, so Razer won by default, and then Razer and Chaos 2 faced off in the final of that event, and Chaos 2 won. But in this situation, I don't know if the same thing would happen, but so I've got to go with the more likely scenario, which is Razer beats Chaos 2 again. So with that, Razer keeps its title. So going into Series 5, there is a bit of a different order, only because King Bee Powerworks did make it to the Heat final as King Bee 3. It would be seeded instead of Smidsy, because Smidsy didn't make it to the Heat final. But I'd have to figure out where it would be seeded. I guess it would probably be seeded 24, just for the sake of simplicity, really. But as for where Panic Attack would be seeded, it probably wouldn't be seeded very high, even if it's the Series 2 champ. So here's how they'd be lined up. There would be a proper order in terms of the top four and the grand finalists. So Razer would stay 1, Chaos 2 would stay 2, Firestorm 3 would be seeded 3rd, Pussycat would be 4th, then Hypnodisc would be seeded 5, Stinger would be 6th, Then 3 Stegs to Heaven would be 7th. Wild Thing 8th. Really Big Cheese 9th. Dominator 2 10th. Tornado 11th. Spawn again would be 12th. And then Panic Attack. Not Panic Attack. Pussycat. Panic Attack. Panic Attack, I feel, would actually be seeded 13th here. Probably due to the fact that it did beat Exterminator in Series 3. This is my absolute best guess as to where Panic Attack would be. Of course, I might be wrong, but again, that's what these what ifs are about. It's down to best guess. And then the others just remain the same. So yeah, because King Bee would be 24th, it and Chronic 2 would be in Heat A, and Smidsy and Obsidian would take King Bee's place in Heat F. So here's how it plays out. Again, everyone keeps their first round battles, but the battles are mixed around a bit to be tailored to the respective heats. So, in the case of Heat A, Razer beats Big Nipper, King Bee Powerworks beats Chronic 2, 8645T beats T-Bone, and Steel Avenger beats Tartan Terror. Then Razer beats Steel Avenger, and I feel like King Bee Powerworks would probably beat 8645T. Most probably. Or it could be flipped over a few times, but honestly, I don't think it would matter who would win between the two, because either of them would just get outright beaten by Razer. Now, Heat B, Firestorm's heat. Firestorm and Decapitator are here instead of Heat D. So Firestorm beats Decapitator, Bulldog Breed beats Juggernaut 2, Lamsey beats Walwatt, and Atomic beats Can Opener. So now Firestorm would face Atomic, and Bulldog Breed beats Lamsey. Now we know that the Lamsey Bulldog Breed fight plays out the same way, but then there's an unexpected twist regarding Firestorm and Atomic. I think I went over this fight already, but I actually think Atomic would beat Firestorm here. Don't get me wrong, I'm not underestimating Firestorm. It's good, but I feel like Atomic has a better chance of flipping it over and just doing a lot more because it's got a wider blade, and I strongly think Atomic would send Firestorm flying out of the arena, and again, it would be a major shock seeing a 2-time grand finalist just get beaten in the heat right there and then. Everyone goes crazy over it, and then of course Atomic would beat Bulldog Breed because, let's face it, it's got a better flipper, has a better chance of sending Bulldog Breed flying out. Atomic wins the heat. So now we come to Hypnodisc's heat. So Hypnodisc and Black Widow are in this one Heat C instead of B. So Hypnodisc beats Black Widow, General Carnage 2 beats Gazunderbot, S3 beats Plunderbird 5, and Mousetrap beats Shredder. Then round 2, Hypnodisc would demolish General Carnage, then S3 beats Mousetrap, just like in the actual timeline. So then the two spinners face off in the heat final, and Hypnodisc is more likely to win this encounter. I don't think S3 would get a chance of striking Hypnodisc, and Hypnodisc could get at those tyres, hit the side panel where the disc is. Yeah, Hypnodisc just about gets through. So then, Heat D, 3 Stegs to Heaven and 11 are here instead. So the winners of the respective battles: 3 Stegs, Sacromalot, Reactor 2, and Gemini. And of course, Reactor beats Gemini, and I actually think Sacromalot would beat 3 Stegs. Because 3 Stegs might have a hard time hitting Sacromalot accurately, and Sacromalot can just keep flipping 3 Stegs over and over again, and even get it on its side and just leave it there. And with this, Sacromalot would go through to the Heat final for the first time ever, and then get flipped over by Reactor 2. Because Reactor 2 can self-right. This version of Sacromalot sadly can't, so Reactor 2 goes through to the semi-finals. Then Heat E, Wheelie Big Cheese and Wolverine are here instead of Heat H, so the winners: Wheelie Big Cheese, the Alien, Napalm, and Prize Fighter Mach 2. Prize Fighter still beats the Alien in the actual timeline, and Napalm, of course, doesn't last 5 seconds against Wheelie Big Cheese. It just gets flipped over instantly, and tossed all over the place like a plaything, and then just gets set flying out. Then Wheelie Big Cheese and Prize Fighter face off in the Heat final, and it's a rematch and grudge match from the 4th Wars. But I don't see Prize Fighter winning this, sadly. I mean, Wheelie Big Cheese again just sends it flying and goes through to the semi-finals. So then, the next heat. A Tornado and Gravedigger are here instead of Heat G. And like I said, Smidsy and Obsidian are here instead of Heat A. So the winners being Tornado, Smidsy, Corkscrew, and Exterminator. So then, well, the Exterminator versus Corkscrew fight plays out the same way. And then, in a battle of invertible pushing robots, it is a close fight. Of course, Tornado is the superior pusher of the two. But Smidsy does put up a fight and is able to shove Tornado a bit more easily. But then, in a shocking turn of events, Tornado would break down here. And this isn't lazy writing, by the way, because well, it is mentioned on the wiki that, or at least I'm pretty sure it was mentioned on the wiki, that Tornado breaks down at this stage, as how else would Dietor have beaten it in the actual timeline? Because, yeah, the same thing ends up happening, and Smidsy takes the win. And then Smidsy goes up against Corkscrew, and the weapon still isn't really working here. So Smidsy takes advantage of this and uses its jaws to flip Corkscrew over. Mind you, Smidsy is quick and nippy anyway, and would be able to come at Corkscrew anyway before it span up anyway to full speed. I guess. But no, it didn't seem like they were working properly. Otherwise, Dominator 2 wouldn't have been able to beat Corkscrew and tip it over. So with this, Smithy finally wins a heat and goes through to the semi-finals. So then Heat G, and luckily Spawn again stays in this heat, even if it's seeded 12th instead of 30th, and Panic Attack and Barbarous 2 are here instead of Heat J. So the respective winners being Panic Attack, Dietor, Evolution and Spawn again. And just to make things match the real timeline, Spawn again still gets pitted against Evolution and just flips it out the arena, and Panic Attack just beats Dietor quite easily with no problems. Although alternatively, obviously, Spawn again would have beaten Dietor as well, and yeah, Panic Attack would have beaten Evolution. So then the two seeds face off in the heat final, but it wouldn't be that simple for Spawn again. I mean, they go at each other, and the Spawn again does get Panic Attack head on and flip it over, and then attempts to shove it and try and get it out the arena, but it does. Panic Attack gets nudged and spun while on its back, but does manage to get back up and self-right. Spawn again would of course try to flip the Panic Attack out the arena, but doesn't quite manage to do it. Maybe it does get it on the sidewall, but Panic Attack is able to get off there. And then the flipper gets jammed open. So Spawn again goes for the pit. Then Panic Attack is able to self-right. Well, I guess I should describe the angle a bit more. I mean, it is like at a diagonal angle on top of Spawn again, and when it's shoved to the wall, Spawn again tries and fails to flip Panic Attack out, doesn't quite manage to do it. And yeah, like I said, the flipper gets jammed open, and this gives Panic Attack a chance to fight back. I mean, Panic Attack would get back up eventually regardless, depending on the angle. I don't think it would have been at an angle that Firestorm 3 put it at in the All-Stars. So Panic Attack just shoves back, and then Spawn again ends up breaking down, which actually did happen when it fought Dietor, but it didn't matter because Dietor had been flipped over already and couldn't self-right. Of course, alternatively, I guess Spawn again could also miss twice with the flipper, you know, depending. But yeah, with this, Panic Attack would go through to the series semi-finals. So then we come to Heat H, and Dominator 2 and Derek are here instead of Willy Big Cheese and Wolverine. So the winners being Dominator 2, Axor, Crustacean and Behemoth. Dominator 2 then faces Axor and just keeps hitting Axor with the axe, just doing a lot more damage. Axel can't do that much, so Dominator 2 goes through. Then the Behemoth versus Crustacean fight plays out the same way. In Heat Final, Crustacean literally can't do anything against Dominator 2. I guess it would try and shove it, but Dominator 2 just fills Crustacean full of holes. And I guess it would be satisfying to see, because it's got such a smooth surface, Crustacean does, and it's just easy to take, just have hits from the axe. So yeah, Dominator 2 makes it to the semi-finals yet again. So then Heat I, and Wild Thing and Trouble and Strife are here instead of Heat E. Respective winners, of course, being Splinter, Bigger Brother, Tetanus, and Wild Thing. Bigger Brother still beats Splinter by flipping it out the arena. Wild Thing should be able to beat Tetanus with no problems at all. And then in the Heat Final, I guess it goes the same way as Wild Thing's fight with Chaos 2 in the real timeline here. It would just be flipped all over the place, even end up on its side. Then again, I guess the prize fighter fight is more accurate. Either way, I don't see Wild Thing beating Bigger Brother, so Bigger Brother goes through to the semi-finals. In Heat J, Stinger and Hippopotamus are here instead of C, respective winners being Cat 3, Major Tom, Tiberius 2, and Stinger. The Cat 3 versus Major Tom fight plays out the same way. Meanwhile, Stinger would fight Tiberius, but Tiberius 2 just can't do anything to Stinger. Like, it just has too much trouble grabbing it, and Stinger just keeps clobbering Tiberius like it's nothing, so Stinger would win on a judge's decision and then face Cat 3 in the Heat Final. But Cat 3 would just get beaten too easily. Stinger again makes it to the semi-finals. So then we go on to Heat K, and Pussycat is here instead of Heat L. So the respective winners being Pussycat, Widow's Revenge, Destructor Bubble, and Suicidal Tendencies before it had engine trouble, so then Rick is reinstated. So then round 2, the Rick versus Destructor Bubble fight plays out the same way, and Pussycat just shreds Widow's Revenge. I mean, Widow's Revenge doesn't stand a chance. So Pussycat will go on to fight Rick, but Rick can't really do that much. I mean, its flipper isn't quite on the level of Chaos 2 and Wheelie Big Cheese and Atomic. So, I mean, sure, Pussycat would get flipped, but Pussycat will just cause significant damage to Rick. I mean, even if it lasts the full fight, Pussycat would win on a judge's decision. So then Heat L, Chaos 2 and Storm Force are here instead of Heat A. Now I did already go over this before when I did the episode What If Firestorm 2 beat Dominator 2 in Series 4. Just to recap, the winners of course would be Chaos 2, Terahertz, Claude Hopper and Fluffy. Fluffy still beats Terahertz like in the actual timeline. Chaos 2 would beat Claude Hopper, even though it wouldn't be easy, and then Chaos 2 would just about beat Fluffy. Maybe Fluffy could get a hit in on Chaos 2, but I feel like several flips would just break Fluffy on the inside and cause it to break down, since it does have a history of breakdowns. So Chaos 2 wins this. So, semi-final 1, Hypnodisc faces Bigger Brother and gets beaten in the same way as the actual timeline, because this plays out the same way, but just 2 rounds earlier. Razer would face Wheelie Big Cheese, which would be bad for Razer, but Wheelie Big Cheese wouldn't get a chance to get at Razer, really. It'd be hard to get underneath. Of course, Razer probably wouldn't be able to damage Wheelie Big Cheese, but it doesn't matter, because after a slippery, untidy struggle, Wheelie Big Cheese just breaks down and Razer wins. Then Panic Attack would face Pussycats. Yeah, that still happens at the same stage, and so this literally plays out the same way. So yeah, Pussycat goes through. So now we have a somewhat similar losers melee to the actual timeline, only Hypnodisc is facing Wheelie Big Cheese and Panic Attack instead of Firestorm 3. But Hypnodisc should be able to get through with ease. So Hypnodisc just attacks both robots on their sides. A Panic Attack's skirts would be ripped, and Wheelie Big Cheese's wheels would either get dislodged or slashed, just like in that mayhem. And Wheelie Big Cheese breaks down again. Panic Attack is still having some internal issues, which makes it hard to fight back against Hypnodisc. Hypnodisc would no doubt tear off the forks, or at least damage them significantly. So yeah, Hypnodisc is more likely to win this one and get back into the competition. And would then go on to face Pussycat again, while Razer takes on Bigger Brother. Now, Bigger Brother has been repaired, like everyone rallies and still repairs Bigger Brother, but again, same thing happens as in the actual timeline, and Razer just beats Bigger Brother in the same way as the real Series 5 Grand Final. So Razer goes through. Meanwhile, in the Hypnodisc versus Pussycat rematch, it doesn't quite go the same as last time. Hypnodisc has greatly improved since the Fourth Wars, and is able to dodge the blade. This time Pussycat wouldn't get a chance to get at the wheels, and Hypnodisc would tear off a wheel or two from Pussycat and maybe even damage a caster or the saw itself. Either way, regardless, I don't think Pussycat would win this rematch. Hypnodisc goes through to the grand final. Then in the other semi-final, we have Smidsy face off against Dominator 2. Now we know this fight did happen in Series 6 and Dominator 2 did win, but I feel like that was down to dumb luck, because Smidsy was easily pushing Dominator 2 around, and Dominator 2 wasn't really doing much to Smidsy, but they both ended up in a CPZ and Growler just rammed them both. Sure, Dominator 2's bottom base was ripped, but Smidsy ended up coming off the worse for wear and lost a lot of movement and just got slow and sluggish and was more susceptible to axe attacks. But this time that wouldn't happen because Growler doesn't exist yet, so Smidsy is able to push Dominator 2 all over the place. and just flip it over a few times. I mean, maybe if Dominator 2 gets lucky, it could hit a tyre with the axe, but because Smidsy's so quick and manoeuvrable, Dominator 2 wouldn't get a chance to. I mean, maybe the axe would go through, but it doesn't matter that much, because Smidsy can just push Dominator 2 around very easily. Yeah, ultimately, Smidsy would win on a judge's decision. Yeah, that's that. Meanwhile, Atomic would flip Reactor 2 all over the place. Yeah, Reactor 2 is just no match. And then Stinger and Chaos 2 face off, and this pretty much plays out the same way as the Series 4 fight. With Chaos 2 just winning on control and just being a bit more aggressive. So yeah, the loser's melee is Reactor 2, Dominator 2, and Stinger. But unfortunately, because Reactor 2 is too slow, it can't really keep up with anyone. And Stinger just swings around and just clobbers a Dominator 2 and Reactor with ease. I mean, the axe, yeah, Dominator 2 just struggles to hit Stinger with the axe, so Stinger wins through a judge's decision. So then it would get back in and then face Atomic. Yeah, Atomic. Meanwhile, Smidsy would Chaos 2 would face Smidsy, and this fight would literally play out the same way as in the actual timeline, since they did actually fight in Series 5. So Smidsy gets sent flying out the arena. Meanwhile, Atomic would send Stinger flying out the arena. It just can't catch a break with flippers. So yeah, Stinger is sent flying and Atomic goes through to the grand final. So again, Razer and Chaos 2 are here, but this time joined by Hypnodisc and Atomic. Yeah, Razer would then face Atomic and beat it, and just get over it too easily, just crush it, and Atomic would finally be beaten. Ooh, sorry about that. Meanwhile, Hypnodisc would face Chaos 2, which would be the actual first time they'd fight. But I don't think Chaos 2 would get a chance to send Hypnodisc out the arena. I'm sure it could flip it over a few times, but Hypnodisc would just hit a side of Chaos 2 and hit one of the front corners, and Chaos 2 would be immobile on one side. So Hypnodisc finally gets through to the grand final stage. So then the playoff is a flipper frenzy, and both robots should be able to be repaired in time. And in this rematch, Atomic comes out on top this time. It literally plays out the same way as the bigger brother fights. They'd flip each other, but Atomic would have Chaos 2 end up on its back, unable to self-right, and would then shove it in the pit. So Atomic takes third place. Meanwhile, Razer and Hypnodisc face off in the grand final, and finally we get a grand final between the most destructive robots, even though in this timeline that fight did happen before. So this is a rematch from this timeline's Third Wars, but this time Hypnodisc would come out on top. I mean, I already went over it in another video, but yeah. Hypnodisc should easily be able to hit the sides of Razer, leave gashes on the side, maybe rip a side panel off, and could even take off one of Razer's rear wheels, or even hit Razer so hard that it breaks down, and would make it break down in the same way that Pussycat did in the grudge match. But this is just my best guess, of course. Regarding who'd win in a match-up in whichever series setting, it was mentioned that if it was the Series 5 setting, it would depend on who'd get to whom first. But because of this, I genuinely do think Hypnodisc would win this. So Razer, after winning the previous two series, finally gets dethroned, and Hypnodisc is finally crowned the Series 5 champion. So, going into Series 6, yeah, the seed lineup is pretty different. So, because of the circumstances, it would be 1 Hypnodisc, 2 Razer, 3 Atomic, 4 Chaos 2, 5 Stinger, 6 Bigger Brother, 7 Smidsy, 8 Panic Attack, yeah, that's the only one that's the same, 9 Dominator 2, 10 Reactor 3, 11 Firestorm 4, and 12 Wild Thing. So Tornado, S3 and Spawn again wouldn't be seeded. But here's how I've figured this out. It's actually quite convenient. Since Smidsy is seeded 7th in this timeline, and S3 was seeded 7th in the real timeline, they can just go in the same heat. So everyone will keep their same battles, but they'll just be switched around a bit, and so will the heats again. Plus, Reactor 3 is seeded 10th, so Spawn again can go into this heat, which by default leaves Tornado to be in the same heat as Atomic. And of course, because Atomic and Reactor are seeded, it means they would go through, because from what I read, it didn't seem like they qualified for Series 6 in the actual timeline for some reason. Obviously, with Hypnodisc being the #1 seed and reigning champion, it's in the first heat instead of Heat K, and well, like I said before, nothing would change. Well, it wouldn't be changed at all. I mean, there'd be no need to, really. yeah, that plays out the same way with Hypnodisc winning. But as for Tornado's heat, I'd have to figure out who Atomic would replace. Because one rule here is that it would just replace someone who lost in the first round. I think I went over this before, but again, we're going to make it so that Terrible is not there. I mean, no disrespect, I just feel that among it, Edgehog, Judge Shred and Revolution 2, it just seems to be the weaker one. So Atomic would replace Terrible, which would mean that it's in the same battle as Tornado. And yeah, they're just both the superior robots here, so Inshreddable and Edgehog get beaten. Meanwhile, 4 and Anarchy beat Revolution 2 and Judge Shred 2.5. So yeah, a Tornado would still beat 4 in round 2. But as for Atomic and Anarchy, ooh, that's a tough one. I'm not sure how much Atomic could lift, but I don't think it matters, considering that it's a walker. Yeah, Anarchy is a walker, that is, and Atomic would be able to be more aggressive and almost tip it over, whereas Anarchy can't really do that much, so Atomic wins. And then the heat final is Atomic and Tornado. And now, as it's been mentioned before, a Tornado tends to use the scoop when it goes up against a flipper. But there is a chance that once Atomic flips Tornado over, it might make the mistake of flipping it back over the right way up. Which makes this fight hard to predict. Because yeah, Tornado, the right way up, can shove Atomic around all over the place quite easily, and even nudge the pit release button. But I guess Atomic, realising the mistake, would try and flip it back over again. Yeah, it's a tough call, a really tough call here. So yeah, I guess because Atomic would have flipped Tornado back over, it could go either way. I have to make my best guess here, just so I don't do any backtracking. Yeah, this is a really tough call to make. But I guess the team would try and avoid getting in a position where they'd get flipped back over. So my best guess is that they don't give Atomic a chance to flip it back over again, and will ultimately shove it down the pit. So, yeah, this is the third time now that the third seed has gone out in the heat, and at this point it feels like there's now a third seed curse as well as an 8th seed curse. So yeah, Tornado wins this one. So yeah, Heat C, Stinger's Heat is here instead. 13 black wins that one. Now, regarding the battles involving Smidsy, S3, and actually Dominator 2, plus Chromalot, there'd have to be a little switcheroo here. So yeah. So Heat D would consist of, obviously, Smidsy, S3, Shredder, Rhubarb, Armadillo, Common Getter X, Warhog, and St. Aggro. So, yeah, the winners of those respective fights would, of course, be Smidsy, Common Getter X, S3, and Shredder. But who would face whom, though? Well, I suppose Smidsy would either face S3 or Shredder. If it faces Shredder, then Smidsy would beat Shredder, while S3 beats Common Getter X quite easily. And then S3 and Smidsy would meet in the Heat final. And I guess Smidsy would shove S3 around a lot, but I feel like S3 would get some good hits in with the disc, maybe even send Smidsy over. And this would keep going on until it goes to a judge's decision and S3 would win. So all of a sudden the seeds are dropping like flies here. Of course, alternatively, round 2, those two could face there instead, and the same thing would happen, whereas Common Getter X would probably beat Shredder, and the team would go through to the Heat final for the first time, but would get trashed by S3. So now we come to Dominator 2's Heat, which is Heat E instead of J. So yeah, robots in this heat would of course be Dominator 2, Something, Hydra, and Accident 2, plus Chromalot, the Alien, ICU, and GBH2. And yet naturally Dominator 2, Hydra, Chromalot, and GBH2. Chromalot and the Alien would win those respective fights. And Chromalot would face Dominator 2. I mean, it might be able to flip Dominator 2, or it could struggle, but I feel like Dominator 2 can just get some good axe blows in and push Chromalot around. And even get through the tyre that surrounds it, maybe even leave a gap. And maybe even get Chromalot at the right angle to flip using the bi-wedge shape. Either way, I feel like Dominator 2 is more likely to win. Meanwhile, as for Hydra against the Alien, I I feel like Hydra probably would, because the alien's rear weapon doesn't seem to be working at this point. So yeah, Hydra wins this, and then the heat final plays out the same way with Dominator 2 winning. So then heat F, which is Firestorm's heat, instead of Stinger, and Firestorm 4 wins that, just making up a lot for its bad run in the Fifth Wars in this timeline. The heat G, Wild Thing's heat, is here instead. That plays out the same way with Wild Thing winning. Now, Reactor 3 and Spawn again. I need to work out which of the two losing robots here would get replaced, because there's a choice of Hot Pants, Hassocks Hog, Short Circuit, and Tiberius 3. I'd say if I had to pick the weakest of the bunch, let's see. It would either be Hot Pants or Short Circuit. I believe Short Circuit does have a spinning disc of its own, and they're generally more damaging than an axe. So I'm going to guess that Reactor 3 replaces Hot Pants. And Reactor 3, I think I saw did have a disc on the back as well. So yeah, Reactor is there with Ming 3, Hassocks Hog, and Spam. I think Ming and Reactor just have a pretty easy time of it. It's just flipping and crushing. Maybe Reactor could get a hit in with its rear disc. So yeah, it's an easy win for them. Meanwhile, Spawn again and Supernova win their other fight. But then what happens here? It was hard to find an image of what Reactor 3 looked like, but yeah, this is what it looks like. Yeah, I must also point out that it's just hard to say how quick and manoeuvrable Reactor 3 is. Maybe it would have been a bit faster than Reactor 2, but yeah, it would have put up a fight against Spawn again, because I'm pretty sure they would have been paired against each other while Supernova and Ming 3 got pitted against each other, with Supernova winning. Yeah, Spawn again, of course, is having those issues, and I feel like it would either get flipped over, or at least attempted to be flipped over. It doesn't look like it's got a large flipper again, but I guess the disc would probably put Spawn again out of action, and it would be eliminated. So Reactor would then go up against Supernova in the heat final, but I think its luck would run out here. Again, depending on how quickly it can move. but I feel like Supernova would have a good chance of winning this matchup. Just coming at Reactor, just like that. I assume the armour would still be really tough. But I'm not sure a Reactor would get really lucky here, and yeah, with Supernova being more aggressive and more likely damaging, I think Supernova would win and go through to the series semi-finals. I mean, I feel like even if it gets flicked a bit by Reactor's disc, I don't think it would stop it in its tracks. Then for Heat I, Panic Attacks Heat, literally nothing changes. Yeah, then J, Bigger Brother's Heat, that plays out the same way with Bigger Brother winning. Then K, Chaos 2, Danton Kia wins that. And finally Razer's Heat. Yeah, Razer wins, hands down. So the series semi-finals. I guess we would have Hypnodisc face Dominator 2. A Tornado would face Firestorm 4. While 13 Black goes up against S3. Yeah, it's just easier to figure this out, as everyone has to follow the original path as much as possible. So yeah, Hypnodisc beats Dominator 2. The fight with Firestorm and Tornado plays out the same way, or does it? Because I feel like, provided the team have seen the fight with Atomic, if they do flip Tornado over, they probably wouldn't make the mistake of turning it back over. So this fight would probably go a lot differently. And Tornado. And after Tornado is flipped upside down by Firestorm, it's easier for Firestorm to push Tornado around. And you know, it's difficult for Tornado to push anyone while upside down. So this gives Firestorm a chance to push Tornado into CPZs and stuff. Or even get it up against the sidewall and just flip it onto there and just leave it there. Or if it doesn't, then ultimately Firestorm could win on a judge's decision and go through. Meanwhile, in the Battle of the Spinners, I see 13 Black just beating S3. Yeah. I mean, S3 is good, but I feel like 13 Black could beat it with not too many problems. Again, it would just hit one of the wheels and the side panel where the disc is. And S3 would be left the worse for wear, so 13 Black wins that one. So the loser's melee is Tornado, Dominator 2, and S3. And Tornado just pushes the both of them all over the place. Like, neither of them are a match for Tornado, and Tornado just gets straight back into the competition. of course, I must point out, for the sake of argument, even if the Firestorm versus Tornado fight played out the exact same way as in the actual timeline, then Firestorm would have beaten these guys as well. So, yeah, we're left with Hypnodisc, Firestorm, Tornado, 13 black. So Tornado would then go on to fight Razer, while Firestorm fights 13 black. And yeah, of course, all of these fights did happen for real in the 6th Ward, with 13 black being flipped over by Firestorm and just being left there, and a Tornado beating Razer on a close judge's decision. Oh no, sorry, not Razer, Hypnodisc. What the hell am I thinking about? And yeah, Tornado beats Hypnodisc on a judge's decision, eliminating the champion from the competition. I'm just going to turn on the lights. So yeah, the second semi-final. We would have Wild Thing face Danton Kier. Razer would fight Bigger Brother. Even though they're the highest ranking robots here, and a Supernova against Terahertz. I mean, Razer and Bigger Brother are the highest seeds here, but this is just the easiest way to figure this out. Mind you, though, there are 3 seeds and 3 unseeded robots, so maybe there would be a switcheroo. I don't know. Either that or Razer would fight Wild Thing just to try and match the real timeline, which would mean Bigger Brother would face Danton Kier instead. I guess that would make the most sense. So, with this in mind, Razer beats Wild Thing, as usual. Danton Kier would beat Bigger Brother. I just think, even though Bigger Brother could turn Danton Kier over a couple of times, I feel like Danton Kier would be able to get underneath Bigger Brother more easily and flip it out. And as for Supernova and Terahertz, I think Supernova is more likely to win this encounter. Just damaging Terahertz's sides, just having that fight go the same way that the Fluffy fights did. So yeah, Terahertz gets a bit trashed. So the losers melee is Terahertz, Bigger Brother and Wild Thing. Now, Wild Thing is just the weakest of the 3 here. Doesn't stand a chance against either of them. It would get hit too much by Terahertz's axe, or just flipped all over the place by Bigger Brother. Now, I know, of course, in a direct confrontation, Terahertz does beat Bigger Brother. However, I feel like because it was left the worse for wear after fighting Supernova, it might end up breaking down, just like it did against Firestorm 4, as yeah, the fight with Razer just proved to be a bit too much, even more so than it looked. So because of this, Terahertz and Wild Thing are eliminated, and Bigger Brother gets back into the competition. So who's left? Razer, Bigger Brother, Supernova, Danzon Kier. So Danzon Kier would then go on to fight Razer, while Bigger Brother fights Supernova. Now, the Razer versus Danzon Kier fight, that plays out the same way as the actual timeline, with Razer going through to our 4th grand final. And that's for Bigger Brother against Supernova. It's hard to say. I guess they try and treat this fight the same way they did with their fight with Disco Inferno. I mean, I think Bigger Brother would do a fairly good job staying clear of the disc. Flipping Supernova over a few times, maybe taking a few hits. And I think they would do a better job of staying clear of the disc, so it would kind of play out a similar way to the real Losers Melee fights that it had with Hypnodisc and Spawn again. And it would probably flip Supernova onto the arena sidewall and just leave it there, really. Or just simply flip it out the arena, but I don't know if that's likely to happen. Either way, I reckon Bigger Brother would win and go through to the grand final for the first time ever. So, yeah, it's a slightly different grand final lineup, actually quite similar to the Series 5 one, only Tornado is there instead of Hypnodisc. So the grand finalists here are Razer, Bigger Brother, Firestorm 4 and Tornado. So Razer would then go on to fight Tornado like 1 round earlier, while Firestorm 4 and Bigger Brother face off. And yeah, the Razer versus Tornado fight, that plays out the exact same way as in the real timeline. So yeah, Tornado wins that one, while Firestorm beats Bigger Brother. And then in the playoff, Razer beats Bigger Brother. And then Firestorm and Tornado fight again. So yeah, this would be a very interesting rematch. And I guess, but what would Tornado use this time? Would it use the disc, or would it use the scoop? It's hard to say, because in the previous fights, using the scoop just ultimately ended up backfiring on them. So maybe they wouldn't use it this time. There is a chance that they might use the small disc instead, because at least that way they can still push Firestorm, although it might be a bit awkward if they attack head on. So yeah, it is a genuine concern. So yeah, this is a tricky one to call, because it really would depend on what weapon Tornado uses for this fight. So this could go two ways. If it uses the scoop again, then this could end up going a similar way to their other fights. I mean, there was that point where Firestorm managed to get underneath Tornado and flip it by pure luck with a front-on collision. So Tornado would try and avoid doing that. Of course, there is a chance that Firestorm could get Tornado at the side and just spin round and try and flip it over that way, but that didn't quite work beforehand. So this probably would end up being more similar to their real fights in the actual timeline, and Tornado would ultimately get Firestorm down the pit and still become the champion of Series 6. Of course, if they used the small spinning disc, they would be able to achieve the same result. As with the disc, they can still push Firestorm at the side or at the back very easily. Although a head-on collision would result in Tornado being flipped over, but that wouldn't really matter because that doesn't do anything. So this time Tornado is more likely to win this encounter and win the whole series. Now, of course, there'd be a little bit of a different lineup for the seeds regarding the 7th Wars, because this time Supernova is seeded. Now, this is made easier by the fact that that Razer doesn't return in this scenario, just like the actual timeline. Atomic probably wouldn't be seeded. But I guess is more likely to be over Ming and Smidsy. So for the 7th Wars, there was a bit of musical chairs going on here. So just like in the real timeline, Tornado and Firestorm are still seeded 1 and 2 respectively, but now we've got 3 Bigger Brother, 4 Supernova, 5 13 black, 6 stands on clear, 7 terahertz. Panic Attack and Pussycat are still 8th and 9th respectively. Atomic is 10th now. Spawn again is 11th, Behemoth 12th, Exterminator 13th, Smidsy 14th, Thermidor 15th, and Storm 2 is still seeded 16th. But this does cause a complication now, because Atomic and Smidsy won't be in the same heat and same battle, and a Storm 2 and Supernova won't be in the same battle, plus Bulldog Breed and Ming won't be seeded. Yeah, this is a difficult one to figure out. Okay, so here's how I figured this out, and boy, this was a nightmare to figure out. But basically, how I worked it out is Supernova would take Ming's place, and Atomic would take Bulldog Breed's place in their fights. Meanwhile, Bulldog Breed would replace Atomic in its fight with Smidsy, and Ming would replace Supernova in Storm's battle. Because the way I worked it out is with Smidsy, Terra Turtle and Cygnus, it seems like whoever organised the pairings wanted a flipper in there, so it made sense to put in Bulldog Breed. Whereas the other switch around with Supernova and Ming was just something done by default here. And yeah, again, regarding Jabba, Mantis and Infernal Contraption, they probably would have wanted a flipper in there as well. So, here's how this works. Pussycat's heat would still be heat A, and that plays out the same way. With Tornado's heat being heat E, and that plays out the same way, because they did that in that order for some reason. So yeah, heat B, Bigger Brother's heat is here instead of heat O, and Typhoon 2 wins that. Heat C, 13 Black's heat is here instead of D, and Gravity wins. And D, Terahertz. Yeah, Grim Reaper wins that. Right, F, Spawn again, because it's seeded 11th. Raging Nightmare wins that. And Exterminator's heat is up in heat G instead of F. Exterminator wins. In H, Thermidor 2's heat is here instead of heat J. Thermidor wins. Now for the interesting stuff. So yeah, Storm 2's heat is here, and of course, like I said, Ming replaces Storm 2, which doesn't seem like a fair matchup though, considering that Ming has a lifting arm which is a drill. Then again, I'm not sure Bulldog Breed would have fared much better here had I chosen that pairing. But that being said, I feel like Ming would come off better than Mayhem and Rhino. But then again, Ming isn't really able to do much to anyone. But then again, it is more mobile than Rhino, so I feel like Storm 2 and Ming would win on a judge's decision. Then Steel Avenger and Trax win their other fights. Storm 2 then beats Trax. And I feel like Steel Avenger would beat Ming. And then Heat Final plays out the same way, with Storm 2 ramming Steel Avenger out the arena, which was amazing. So Heat J, Smidsy's Heat is here. Like I said, Bulldog Breed replaces Atomic, and well, Bulldog Breed and Smidsy are just the stronger robots here, and they go through. The other fight plays out the same way. Then Smidsy beats Mean Streak, and I think Bulldog Breed will beat Hellbent. And then we have a pretty good Heat Final between Bulldog Breed and Smidsy, but I'm not sure Smidsy can do a lot, really. I mean, it can push Bulldog Breed around a bit, but Bulldog Breed just has more attack power, and I think Bulldog Breed would win on a judge's decision. So yeah. Then Heat K, which is Behemoth's Heat instead of L. Mute wins that. And then Bulldog Breed's original Heat is there, but like I said, Atomic replaces Bulldog Breed. So yeah, Atomic and Mantis beat Jabber and Infernal Contraption. Cat 3 and Hard win the other fight. Then Atomic would flip Hard out the arena. Cat beats Mantis on a judge's decision. And then, well, I feel like Atomic would just throw Cat 3 out the arena. It would have an easier time than Bulldog Breed did, that's for sure. Then Heat M, which is Panic Attacks Heat, nothing changes there. Then Heat N, Danton Kia's Heat is there instead of Heat C, and nothing changes, Danton Kia wins. Then the next one, Supernova, is here, and this is Ming's original Heat, but Supernova is there instead. Yeah, Metalis just gets trashed. Ceros would probably take a couple of hits from Supernova, but would flip Scraptosaur over, and yeah, I don't believe Scraptosaur can self-rise, but yeah, I see Supernova and Ceros going through. Then Supernova would beat Saint Aggro with no problems, and I think would then beat Ceros. So Supernova wins the heat, and then final heat, Firestorm's Heat, literally nothing changes. And yeah, we'd have the exact same semi-final lineups. Only Supernova would face Exterminator, just to make this a lot easier. So yeah, obviously Tornado would beat Raging Nightmare, Gravity would beat Danzon Kia, and Bulldog Breed would be Tough as Nails. But I'm trying to figure out who'd win between Exterminator and Supernova. I mean, Supernova is quicker and could easily hit Exterminator at any angle. Although Exterminator could probably get a hit in with the disc and send it flying. But I don't know, I feel like despite the reliability issues, I would say Supernova is more likely to come out on top here. And would even cause the disc to stop working. I mean, Typhoon 2 did, so yeah, naturally Supernova could. So Supernova would win this and go on to face Bulldog Breed. Tornado does take out Gravity and go through to the grand final. But who would win between Supernova and Bulldog Breed? I think Bulldog Breed would struggle a bit. I mean, sure, it could flip Supernova a few times, but it's invertible. It can just keep going, and I feel like Supernova can just keep colliding with Bulldog Breed, causing significant damage and even immobilise it on one side. So Supernova goes through to the grand final here. Meanwhile, the other semi-final plays out the exact same way as in the original timeline, with Storm 2 and Typhoon 2 going through. So then, grand final, Storm 2 beats Tornado, and then in a battle of the spinners, Supernova's luck runs out. It just gets trashed by Typhoon 2. It might be tricky for Supernova to hit Typhoon 2 head on. Quite possibly. So yeah, I'm just not sure Supernova would be able to get Typhoon 2 at a head-on collision, and would take damage. Quite significant damage, and yeah, Typhoon 2 just goes through. I guess should a head-on collision happen, I guess it depends what way Supernova's disc is spinning. Because I can never remember if it spins that way or spins that way. I mean, if Typhoon 2 and Supernova just spin in opposite directions, then they could just bounce off each other like that. Otherwise, I suppose there is a chance that Supernova's disc could tear into the body, but I'm just not sure. I just feel, I guess the shock of it would just go through the insides of Supernova, again due to its problems with reliability. Either way, I'm not sure Supernova would come out of this alive, and so Typhoon 2 will go through with some repairs to make one way or another. And whether or not there's a playoff would depend on how healthy Supernova is. Either way, I don't think it would stand a chance against Tornado. So yeah, Tornado still gets third place, and then the grand final plays out the same way, with Typhoon 2 winning. Whew, there we are, we eventually reached the end. I dread to think how long this one ended up being. So this is pretty much what would happen if Razer didn't break down in Series 3 against Aggrobot. So Razer would be a 2-time UK champion instead of Chaos 2, winning Series 3 and 4. Hypnodisc would end up winning Series 5, but Tornado would unfortunately... well, that sounds a bit harsh, isn't it? Tornado would still win Series 6 and Typhoon 2 would still win Series 7. Although maybe things would be different if Atomic did beat Tornado in the 6-4s in this timeline. I guess Atomic still would have beaten Firestorm. Who else went through? Oh yeah. So it would have been Hypnodisc, Atomic, Firestorm, 13 Black. So in which case Hypnodisc still would have been eliminated, this time by Firestorm, and Atomic would have beaten 13 Black. Razer and Bigger Brother still would have gone through. And then I would have felt like, regardless of the matchups, Razer would have reclaimed its title by defeating Firestorm 4. Well, Atomic beat Bigger Brother, but Razer would have then beaten Atomic, and I feel like it would have ultimately got beaten by Typhoon 2 still. God, this was a nightmare to figure out, and yeah, it was annoying that I had to spontaneously just think of what would happen on the spot, because I would have thought Smidsy would have still been seeded, but the thing was, I noticed that for the 5th Wars, they only seeded robots that would either make the semi-finals and beyond, or the heat final, whereas in this timeline, Smidsy doesn't make it to the heat final. So yeah, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. See you guys later. Bye.